Hello everybody, Joe Bagnones here, welcome back for another episode of Mihoyo. Hope you guys had a lovely little Christmas there and getting ready for your guys' New Year's. Me, it's New Year's Eve as I'm recording this, but it's like 9 in the morning. And for once, I actually woke up at a normal human being time of like 6:30 a.m. Wow. Crazy. My house didn't blow down last night and yesterday. Sure as fuck sounded like it would, though. I'm surprised my roof is still intact. Fortunately, my neighbors, they kept me up all week, last week, fixing their roof, but, you know, at least they got it fixed before this big old storm blew through. Otherwise, they'd be in a fucking world of hurt. But no one cares about me or my personal life. You're just all here. I know how it is. I'm like that too. I don't care about the actual person behind the camera and the mic and their feelings and, you know, what they're going through. No, you're just here for Mihoyo. I know. I would be too. I wouldn't like me either. Anyway, back to Sojiro's plight instead of mine. He has finally defeated the red Oni of the mansion, who is also blue, but don't worry about that. Now we must clear the blue Oni route, who might secretly also be the red Oni. Who knows? Who knows? But not that red. A different red. It's confusing. Don't worry about it. Don't think about it. Head empty. No thoughts. Like a fucking smooth, like a boiled egg. Thoughts and issues just run right off. Water off a duck's back. I'm a little tired. Still adjusting this whole being awake at normal human hours thing. It's fucking crazy. There's like people going about their day and whatnot. I still don't know how to eat a proper breakfast. I had a tray of chicken wings in my lovely new air fryer that my parents got me for Christmas, and a can of pineapple chunks. Thanks, Delmont. I'm sure those pineapples were ethically sourced and whatnot. They probably weren't. The second day of exams ended, and Sojiro was on his way back to the mansion. The road grew steeper and the woods thicker as he made his way up the familiar slope. People in town called it not a hill but a mountain, simply because it took over 20 minutes to climb. That's like a foothill, like real small. This did not sit well with Sojiro, for whom a mountain was something that could not be overcome so easily. Yeah, a mountain takes like a day to get over. The road was paved, for one thing, and the canopy overhead let in plenty of sunlight to guide the way. Also a, like, very well-kept mountain road. Again, mountain in quotation marks. If it was where I was from, it wouldn't be paved at all. Like, at most, the city might send, like, you know, one of those trucks with, like, the big, like, leveler behind it that, like, fucking moves the gravel and whatnot over it like twice a year. And then after that, it's like, you're on your own. If you get washed out, fucking get a shovel and fucking take some dirt from the side. None of the inclines were especially steep, and no animals lurked in the underbrush. There's no chance of losing his way, no reason to worry about getting lost. Sojiro quietly reprimanded himself for getting so wrapped up in his own little world. In the past few weeks since moving here, he had been constantly comparing the town to his former mountain home. Normally, he would not get so upset over it, but in recent days, since meeting Aoko, as it happened, he had become rather hung up on the differences. He was none the wiser as to why, but he knew that Aoko was a force that could not be stopped. This naturally made him want to quicken his own pace. The mansion where they both lived was the, Antipathy? Antipathy, sure, why not? Of her lively personality. Stood out like a sore thumb, Sore thumb, even in a town like Misaki. Some people said it was haunted. There were no ghosts, per se, but it was inhabited by magicians, so their claims were closer to the truth than they could have ever possibly known. You mean to, like, the normal person? Lost in contemplation as he was, the boy failed to notice how his own lack of familiarity with city life played into the equation. In any case, none of his pondering changed what needed to be done. Tomorrow was the last day of exams. That meant he only had a little longer till Aoko stopped taking responsibility for his safety. If possible, today was going to be the day when the mansion's owner accepted his continued residence there. Sojiro slipped between the trees encircling the mansion and walked down the naturally tree-lined avenue that led him to the front door.
Yoshi.
Taking a deep breath, he stepped across the threshold. The drawing room was where he expected to find Alice. However, found himself face to face with the most unexpected scene. A few steps in, he arrived at the large foyer extending from the mansion's entrance. One thing was clearly out of place. The foyer of the mansion was like a hall in a medieval castle. It was illuminated by the cold winter sun casting down through the skylight, unaided by artificial light. The wooden tiles smelled of the outdoors. Really? Wood floors don't really smell like wood that often after, like, decades of use. They just kind of smell like cleaning products. There was Alice, dressed in all black, huddled against a column so enormous it resembled a sharply cornered tree trunk. The mansion was quite literally supporting her frail body. Like a mother's lullaby, or a gently rocking cradle. The heavy atmosphere within this old building suppressed even the slightest stir, almost as if warding away any disturbance to her slumber. Just sleeping on the floor, huh? There she slept in the shadows of home. Hidden away from outsiders, her sleeping figure was enough to mesmerize anyone who laid eyes upon her. Again, still in her shoes, like a weirdo, in her own home, Sojiro instinctively looked up at the ceiling out of sheer awkwardness. He wanted to surprise her, but not in this way. Her slender frame lay asleep by the fireplace. The scene was as beautiful as a painting, yet hard on his heart at the same time. Weird way to sleep, too, just like, her head supporting her entire body weight. Her slumber seemed breathless. She was too still, with not even a hint of movement. And yet, slumped against that frigid column under the cold winter sky, happiness appeared to be her blanket. A passerby would not be blamed for thinking she was in that most peaceful state of eternal slumber, death. You good, dog?
寒くないのかな、この子は。
Sojiro spoke to himself as he gazed idly upon her. Bringing her a blanket or something warm did not so much as cross the boy's mind. Instead, odd as it sounds, the first thing he thought to do was to go prepare some tea. He made sure to be as quiet as possible as he opened the drawing room door. On the table, waiting for him, were 3 pills. They were the medication Aoko required him to take every day when he arrived home. Gulping down the vaguely sweet pills and continuing on to the kitchen, he selected a box of tea from among the many in the cabinet and brewed enough for 2 people. Alice was still asleep when he returned to the foyer. Careful not to make any noise, he crouched close to the ground. He was startled by how cold the floor felt through his pants. Yeah, my floor is also very cold today. I actually had to go put on socks, including my Crocs, for the first time all season, because it got well below the negatives last night with the wind chill, and there's no foundation under this under the floor in my sunroom, so all the cold air is just fucking seeping up. And even with my heater going in the room next door, all the hot air just huddles up at the ceiling and none gets low enough to actually heat it up, and I don't have a space heater that I can throw under my desk, which I should probably get. Thought it'd be warmer here by the fireplace, But then again, he recalled how Aoko had referred to it as a unused hole in the wall. That was likely the case. What was likely the case was that neither she nor Alice knew how to use it properly. Yeah, and you do need to clean your fireplace every couple of years or so, which probably hasn't been done in decades. After taking the teacups from the tray and placing one in front of each of them, Sojiro carefully pulled his textbook on classical literature from his satchel. It's not a purse, it's a satchel! You could still see her angry face from this morning. The reason for her anger was still as much as a mystery as the unusual look he saw briefly come across her face. In any case, one thing was for certain. He needed to start studying for tomorrow. Thanks to Aoko's instruction, today's exams went well enough, but tomorrow's would be an even more formidable challenge. After how angry she was this morning, he could not expect her to help him again tonight. What a vicious cycle. He complained under his breath as he cracked open his textbook. Apparently, he intended to spend his time in this fashion until Alice finally awoke. The sound of the pages turning was the only audible noise in the grand hall. There was no ticking of clocks or rustling of leaves to disturb her sleep. After a few hours, Sojiro quietly rose to his feet. The light that filled the foyer was beginning to turn from white to red. You gonna pick up the tea set, or are you just gonna leave it on the floor? He glanced again at Alice as he stretched his stiff back. She slept in perfect stillness, just as she had this entire time. Sojiro arched his brow in speculation. He had no idea what her normal sleeping schedule was like, so he had no idea as to whether he should wake her. Yeah, she'll just walk up and fucking kick her in the head and push her backwards. As if reaching the end of a long train of thought, Sojiro gave a quick nod of his head and took his leave of the mansion. Today, work was a shift at the Chinese restaurant in Misaki's shopping district, the Mad Bear. Their uniforms had been made by someone with an obvious preference for garish colors. The orange apron was emblazoned with a cartoonish polar bear slashing a wok in two with its powerful claws. The design resembled warning signs about wild animals seen in the mountains and stood out in Misaki for its one-of-a-kind originality. This was the Chinese restaurant, the Mad Bear. Aside from its name and logo, the restaurant was the type of cheap, hole-in-the-wall dive that could be found anywhere. It had faced competition from the ever-increasing number of chain restaurants, though it had managed to last longer than other dining spots, having received rave reviews on a regular basis. The Mad Bear prioritized the personal touch, focusing on its local clientele, and thus made a point to offer home delivery. It had earned the affectionate moniker QKS, the Quick Killer Stop. Weird one, but okay. Making these deliveries was Sojiro's responsibility for the time being. Places in Misaki within cycling distance fell under his domain. Anything beyond that was handled by a more experienced staff member on the legendary 50cc King Salmon motorbike, but anyway. When delivery workers were not out on deliveries, they spent their shift bussing tables or washing dishes. The dining rush was yet to come, and Sojiro and his fellow delivery boys were shooting the breeze while washing dishes in the back. The two were elbow deep in a giant sink as they are enthusiastically scrubbed. As they enthusiastically scrubbed, okay. At least, that's what they pretended to do while they gossiped.
三崎町の大帝都にもメシアンにもその手の注文があったらしいぜ。そんなに肉が欲しいなら下市に行けばいいのにな。なんだって生肉だの大物の鮭丸ごとだのを出前させやがるのか。どうよ、こう露骨にヤバそうな話じゃね？ワニとかアザラシでも飼ってるんじゃねえかな、そいつ。
I mean, or maybe they just want to prepare it the way they like.
他に比べてみると確かに珍しい話だと思う。ところで木の実、ワニって
Big swamp lizard.
ワニはワニだろう。だっせ、実物見たことないのかよ。まあ俺もねえけどな。
I've seen them. Back when I was stationed in Mississippi, we would rent boats on the weekend to go up and down the river. And they'd be on the bank sometimes, but we'd still go swimming in the water, because fuck it, why not? You know, big old boat, scare them off, and if we get got, then, you know, that's what it is. No, circle of life and all that. But they also taste pretty good. They're right when they say they taste like chicken, if you get them young enough. They get more like, I don't know, gamey, muddy, kind of lose their flavor if they're like bigger, older alligators, I've noticed. But I digress.
今度ガクガク動物ランドのアフリカ特集ビデオを貸してやるから見とけよ。
You're gonna blow his fucking mind. This was a familiar pattern of conversation between the two, especially now Konomi was used to Sojiro's lack of general knowledge. Their banter was interrupted by the delivery phone. The manager snapped up the receiver and quickly jotted down the order and address. Once he hung up, everyone in the kitchen did their best to avoid making eye contact with him. Nobody wanted to go rush out for a delivery on such a cold day.
しずきくん、ちょっと遠いけど配達をお願い。
The manager singled Sojiro out for the task, seemingly unfazed by his staff's laziness.
はい、これ届けるもののリスト。異例だから、あまり他のバイトには他言しないように。
The manager tore the sheet with the order and address written on it from his memo pad. Sojiro took one look at it before a grimace quietly spread across his face.
マネージャー？
なんだい？
The manager stared right back at him as if he could tell what he wanted to
君
say.
の疑問はもっともだ。しかしまあ、長いことこの商売をやっていると、時にはこんなバカな話が転がってくることもある。そうおかしなことじゃない。じゃあ、冷蔵庫か
What
ら
do
品
they
物
do?
持ってくるから。
Order some fried rice, sans rice? Sojiro stared in admiration as the manager, dressed in black, marched out of the kitchen in his all-business way. Nowhere was free from the odd occurrence now and then.
Osoi.
It was working. Get off his back. It was after 10 at night. Sojiro had taken a small detour on his way home from work, and now faced an outraged Aoko, as expected. Does he come bearing gifts, though? Seeing her so visibly irritated made him feel a rush of relief. Did not know why she was angry, but he could tell it was a different type of anger than what he had saw earlier this morning.
遅いってまだ10時になったばかりだろう。どうしたんだ青崎。
He set down the cardboard box he'd been carrying in his arms and glanced towards the fireplace. The sleeping girl was there no more.
違うわ。もう10時になったの間違いでしょ。
Oh, hush.
あんたってほんと
Goddamn slave
自
driver.
分がどんな状態にあるか分かってないのね。
What if you got hurt? You could have been dead in a ditch somewhere.
いいから今に来て。
She walked briskly to the other room without pausing, leaving Sojiro standing in confusion, head tilted to one side. He proceeded to pick his box back up and followed after her eagerly. He removed his coat and hung it on a hanger as he entered the living room. Apparently, today was one of those days where Alice kept herself locked away in her room. On the table were the familiar pills.
説明しなかった私も悪いけど、あなたも帰ってくる時間は守ってよね。こっちはそのつもりで作ってるんだから。
Aoko handed him the pills and a glass of water with an expectant look on her face.
薬なら出かける前に飲んだけど、体の調子だって悪くないし。
Doesn't matter how you feel, you gotta take them on their time schedule.
は？なんだって私たちがあんたの健康を気にかけなくちゃいけないのよ。勘違いしてるようだけど、あんたが帰ってくるたびに飲んでるのって、
What?
平たく言えば毒よ。即効性じゃないから、効き目は半日すると出てくるんだけど。
So you gotta come back and
そ
take
の
the
前に
antidote?
新しい毒薬を飲んでおかないと、古い毒が体に回ってばったりいくって寸法ね。アリスのやつ、 これぐらいしないと信用できないって言い張ったのよ。ほら、分かったらさっさと飲む。まあ私もこれ面倒だと思うし、近いうちもっと形のある方法を考えてみるから、それまでこの方法で我慢して。
言ってることは支離滅裂だが、
Yeah.
とにかく今まで良くないものを飲んでたんだな。
Yeah. Sojiro took the pills from her and gulped it down. I mean, it's like ibuprofen. It's bad for your liver, and if you take too much, it'll fucking like dissolve the lining of your stomach. The fact that it was poison gave him no pause at all. As for his roommate's tyrannical behavior, he showed no signs of standing up to it.
まったく毒を持って毒を制するなんて、また古風な真似するな、青崎もアリスも。
Sojiro's face relaxed into a smile upon finding the funny side of the situation. Aoko was utterly dumbfounded as to how he could be happy at a time like this.
今日帰りが遅れたのはアパートまで荷物を取りに行っていたからなんだ。そういうことなら電話の一つでもすればよかった。
I mean, it's not like you have a cell phone.
荷物ってまさかそれじゃないでしょうね。
Sojiro nodded, emphatically, as she pointed incredulously at the cardboard box in his hands.
住んでいないのに家賃を払うのはバカらしいから今日で引き上げてきた。一応いつでも戻れるように話はつけてあるから、
Oh well, at least
3
your
ヶ月ぐらいは
landlord
大
is,
丈夫だよ。
sounds nice.
家賃？
Giving you that little bit of leeway.
あ、そっか、そうよね。私ってばなんでそんなことを忘れてたんだろう。
Yeah, that
アリ
you
スが
can
聞いたら
fucking
喜
charge
ぶ
him.
わ、そりゃ。
A smile blossomed across her face, as they say. It was the open, bold-faced look of a child who had just come up with a mischievous plan. Sojiro shook with fear at the thought of what that smile might bring his way.
けどずいぶん少ないのね、荷物。段ボール一箱分し
The
かないの。
next question is going to be, how much do you make? And then the next question is going to be, okay, so you okay paying that much for rent?
そうかな、十分多いだろう。それよりアリスは自室か？
ちょっと前に戻ったわ。珍しく食後もここに残ってたんだけど、待ちきれなかったみたいね。
She gave Sojiro a meaningful look while continuing to smile that sinister smile.
待ちきれなかったって何を？
Oh,
そ
gee,
りゃ
I
ア
wonder
リス
for
が眠っ
what.
てるのをいいことに、在庫のないフォションとブルーキャリコを勝手に使ってくれたどこかの誰かさんにお仕置きするためなんじゃない？
Oh no, you busted the fancy tea?
ファッションってあのお茶の葉？
そう、私もびっくりしたけどね。アリスがどっかで寝入るのはよくあることだけど、紅茶を用意して眠るなんてのは初めてだったから。
Oh, almost like she didn't.
どんな心境の変化か知りたくて起こしたら、アリスの方が驚いてたわ。
Well,
一
there's only
体
three
誰
people
の
who
仕
live
業
here.
なんだって。
If both of you didn't do it, that narrows it down pretty easily. Sojiro clasped his hands together as if remembering something important. He'd forgotten to clean up the tea before leaving. The regret written from forehead to chin delighted Aoko immensely.
そうか。それじゃあアリスは怒っていただろう。
当然、コマドリがとばっちりでドリ
Now,
ブル
who
されて
cares
たし
what
ね。
Robin thinks?
ああ、俺でも怒る。片付けをきちんとしないなんてだらしないにも程がある。
Sojiro harshly scolded himself for his failure. I don't think that's what she's mad about.
あのね、寝顔を間近で見られたから怒ってるのよ、アリスは。
No, he was studying. He wasn't really looking at her.
そうかな。アリスはそういうのは気にしないと思うんだけど。
I mean, it is kind of creepy, but
あんたはそうかもしれないけど、私たちは気にするの。
Aoko's glare was enough to make glass shatter. There was an indescribable intensity in the way she said that.
それは青崎たち限定の話か？
Yeah, it's more of a girl thing.
世間一般での常識よ。自分が気にしないからって他人もそうだと思ってると、いつかやけどするからね。
Yeah, because people make weird faces and like drool and snore when they're
ロビー
asleep.
で寝ているアリスにだって問題ないか？
No,
見
not
かけ
not in the
たら
most
放っておけないだろう、あんなの。
attractive of states.
その心意気は立派だけど、そこはそれ。この館の持ち主は彼女だから。この洋館内であなたが出会ったあらゆる不義不始末、失敗失態の責任は宗十郎に押し付けられるの。
Gonna have to learn the hard way.
この意味、わかる？
Aoko's question set Sojiro into a trance of deep thought until finally he uttered,
つまりここはアリスの自治領なんだな。
Yes.
はい、よくできました。正確には私とアリスのだけどね。領主は何をやっても許されるってことよ。
She smiled as she spoke and plopped herself down on the sofa. Sojiro remained standing behind the sofa opposite her as he ran over the conversation again and again in his head. The notion of this being their kingdom made him realize he actually had no idea where the girls had come from or their family's background.
青崎、君ご両親はどうしてるんだ？
I don't know, probably fucking back at their house. He inadvertently blurted out, this being the final question foremost on his mind.
生きてるわよ。三崎町から下りに4駅行った東川ってところの地主。死は祖父だけど、今は隠居して両親と一緒の土地に住んでるわ。
Just off doing magic spells in the spare bedroom.
普通の家庭だな。
Also, my fucking jaw slammed really hard on that one. Oh, you might have even heard my teeth fucking click together. Ah. Don't know why my jaw just decided to lock up like that. Sojiro had imagined something more outrageous for family magicians.
両親はね、父さんにはあんまり魔術回路は作られなかったみたいだから。その分、私には2世代分の潜在能力があるって祖父は言ってるけど。
I mean, it's better that way anyway, you know, hide in plain sight and all that.
宗十郎の期待してるような一族は、どっちかっていうとアリスの方よ。
Aoko offered nothing more, as if to suggest that that was as far as she was willing to reveal for now. Sojiro had insisted on talking to Alice directly rather than hearing about things secondhand, so choosing not to go back on his word by pushing the topic further.
ま、詳しくは本人から聞きなさい。アリスの紅茶好きもそこから来てるんだし。そういえば、なんで今日に限ってリーフティーなんか入れたの？ティーバッグを使った方がまだマシだったでしょうに。
青崎がそっちの方がいいって言ったじゃないか。アリスは紅茶にうるさいって。
Yeah, he was being thoughtful about it. Aoko was momentarily at a loss for words. He seemed so oblivious most of the time, but apparently he was attentive to some details, at least selectively.
ま、いいわ。それより明日の放課後だけど、また一人で帰ってくれない？年明けの行事があるんだけど、その場しのぎで行った餅つき大会が通っちゃってさ。
Have fun.
明日も忙しいのよ、私。
Man, mochi's good. Sojiro nodded in acceptance. It's a shame all I can get around here is mochi ice cream, which is itself fine, but it's a little bit of a different beast than like actual like, you know, mochi. In fact, he had already been planning to do so before she even asked.
それはいいけど、体は大丈夫か、青崎。昨日から寝てないだろう。
夕方に3時間ちょい仮眠を取ったから調子はいいわ。
You're one of those people.
そういうあんたこそ
Fucking psychopaths.
体は持つんでしょうね。もう少ししたら昨日の続き始めるわよ。
She meant the all-night cramming session, of course. Needless to say, Sojiro was more than likely to struggle given that he, too, had not slept a wink. All he could do was give her a relieved smile. Thought back to the days just after he transferred here, when she watched his every move from the sidelines and showed a startling amount of concern for him.
いいよ。どのみち苦労するのは青崎の方だし、異例中の異例はありがたく受け取っておくとしよう。
His cheery response grated on her just a little.
あんた、くだらないことだけはしつこく覚えてるんだから。
She heaved her shoulders in exasperation and dropped her head as an excuse to look away from the beaming smile on his face. The following day, the last day of finals had ended without a hitch. that final December hurdle was finally a thing of the past. For all but one student, that is. To Sojiro, the greatest challenge was yet to come. He bid farewell to his classmates, all jittery with excitement for the last day of term, and headed to the Shiroi Nuzuka woods. Shiroi Nuzuka. Damn, I actually fucking got it. I'm so fucking good at this shit. The road home was no different than yesterday. Like he was reliving yet another day, striding up that hill. Yet today, there was a fierce determination in his steps. Today was his last chance, and he wanted nothing more than to talk with that girl. He did not care if she was cruel to him or ignored him, nor whether Aoko was being truthful when she said that she could trap him in a mirror land or something like that. All he really cared about was having the chance to speak with her face to face. But nothing is ever that simple. To tell the truth, what he found upon finally entering the mansion was not wholly unexpected.
よく寝る子だな、本当。
The deja vu he was experiencing made him dizzy. Faced with an exact reenactment of the previous day, he could not help but blurt out what he was thinking. Alice was sleeping by the fireplace, just as she had done yesterday. The way her legs draped to one side resembled those of a princess in a children's book. She looked more comfortable than she had the day before. Miraculously, he had a rare flash of insight that enabled him to read the situation more clearly.
学校で飛び丸は一人何をしているんだろう。
That's a strange thought to be thinking. Upon glancing back at the entrance, he made his decision, took a deep breath, and rolled up his sleeves. If today was a reenactment of yesterday, then he supposed he would play along with that idea. Sojiro removed his shoes and headed for the kitchen. He was off to prepare another ill-fated pot of tea. Since she was angry about him using her precious fauchon, or however it's pronounced, this time he turned to the Jackson's Fruit and Herb brew. That sounds good. Like a peach black tea. That's one of my favorites to go to. Sadly, this was about as much as Sojiro could manage to amend his behavior. He had failed to realize that this was not the brand of tea that had landed him in hot water, but rather his incorrect brewing method. After filling the pot with tea, he carried it back to the foyer. His breath was visible in the cold air as he sat himself down by the fireplace. Sojiro took a sip of the fruity tea he prepared for himself and pulled his textbook from his bag. Exams were now over, but he had been instructed to take extra classes for the subjects from day one of school. Quite inevitable? Inevitable. The foyer was warmer than outside, still far from comfortable. It was enough to make anyone yearn for some source of warmth. Sojiro dove into his electronics textbook in the winter-chilled hall. The class was not very popular, which is why it had been recommended to him in the first place. The fact that everyone who took it started on an equal footing made it more appealing to him than the other classes.
けど、青崎の言う通り。
He downed the rest of the tea, having no appreciation for its flavor, and refilled his cup. The tea was still warm, since the ceramic teapot had excellent heat retention.
文字で物事を覚えるのは苦手みたいだ。
Same. I have my Electronics for Dummies book somewhere around here that I'll occasionally go through in order to actually remember how to do my job. Fortunately, I don't have to learn about the nitty-gritty, because most of my stuff is like the hands-on, like, oh, let me get my multimeter, make a little jumper from this end of the wire to that one, I'll go to the other side of the connection and, like, see if I got continuity. So, knowing about, ohms and resistance and, like, formulas and whatnot, I don't need to do that. All I need to know is find out, is the wire broken, is it shorting to ground somewhere, yada yada. And even that, most of the time, my actual job is either, just swap out a new box and boom, the problem's solved, or run a little maintenance check on it and be like, oh, the computer says this part's bad, and then I go tell someone else to change their part. And very rarely, I'll have to pin new wires. That part's kind of fun. Though, again, I don't have to do it very often, and I kind of suck at it. but I still like doing it. He vaguely recalled their conversation as his eyes advanced across the page. The lack of lighting in the foyer was forcing him to rely on the illumination from the skylight. The light cut into the room at a diagonal angle in such a way as to divide the foyer into light and dark areas, with the fireplace in shadow. The room resembled ancient ruins covered in ash. You should probably, get a feather duster then and, clean it up a bit? Or perhaps the quiet, forgotten world of a faded fairy tale. Time slipped on by within the white walls of this room, hidden away from the sun. The minutes passed slowly for some time, until the sound of a textbook slamming shut brought the room back to reality. Sojiro stretched his stiff back and eagerly got started on cleaning up. He put his textbook back in his bag, placed his cup on the tray, leaving Alice's sitting in front of her on the floor.
バイトの時間だ。
He said unceremoniously. He spoke as if to convince himself that he had no other choice as he prepared to leave the sleepy foyer behind. But before he could, a sound behind him stopped him in his tracks. Turned around with his bag under his arm and tray in his hands. So as not to cause even a ripple in her teacup, he greeted her.
Yeah.
In a light, easygoing manner. She remained seated next to the fireplace like a black-eyed sleeping beauty. Her face was as still as a statue, almost no different than it had been in slumber. Looking at Alice now, I realized just how different she and Aoko really were. Aoko communicated her feelings openly, even if he never could quite tell where they were coming from. Her trademark expression of irritation would keep him guessing as if to the reason why she was angry, but to her credit, her emotional state was always clear. Alice, on the other hand, was completely unreadable. She might be angry, or then again sad. You could not tell either way.
何のつもり?
Her question gave him a sinking feeling in the pit of his stomach. He could not decide whether it was animosity or perplexity that he heard in her voice. If the former, this was likely to turn into a replay of their interaction from the other night. An image of the shattering bottle sprang into his mind. Sojiro knew his response would be extremely important, and after struggling for a few moments, finally worked up the courage to say something. Not just the correct thing, unfortunately. Just not the correct thing.
一口じゃ説明できないから。座るよ。
He had no idea what the correct approach would be, so he simply did whatever came into his mind instead. Okay, not the best start. She gave him no response. Her face said that she detested his presence, but he plowed ahead regardless. Sojiro took his seat and set down the tray once more. Their eyes met. His inscrutable gaze was enough to turn most people... her inscrutable gaze was enough to turn most people away. But the target of her animosity appeared not to notice it at all.
それで何?
ああ、遅くなったけど、こうして話がしたかったんだ、アリスと。
Yeah, I just didn't want to wake you up though about it. Despite having suggested that it would take time to explain, he managed to sum things up succinctly.
私と青子とではなく?
I mean, he can talk to Aoko whenever.
ん? そうだね。青崎とはもっと話したいところだけど、それよりは3人で話してみたい。
Alice found herself out of kilter, unable to read his true intentions. Sojiro continued on, none the wiser to her bewilderment.
青崎は普段からアリスとは会話がないって言うんだ。それが俺のせいなら困るし、俺のせいじゃないならもっと困る。せっかく同じ場所にいるのに会話がないなんて、もったいないと思うんだ。
Each word he spoke was heavy with emotion. Alice remained utterly unable to discern this boy's intentions. All she could parse was that there was something he wanted from her. But what could that be? What she found even stranger was that he was not speaking to her from a place of fear.
あなたは私が怖くないの？
ああ、だってそう言えるほど俺は君をよく知らない。
Her gleaming eyes looked like they were made of polished quartz. His response had not been what she expected. He spoke with pure honesty and unfettered truth. Such boldness, however, did not actually upset her. The conversation ground to a halt. If you could even call it a conversation in the first place. Alice grew tense, as if displeased by the strangely comfortable moment of silence between them. Sojiro endured her cold stare, showing no sign of flinching.
話。
ん？
私と話をしたいと言っ
Yep,
たでし
so
ょ。
say your piece.
なら好きにしてみたら。
It was more a challenge than an invitation. They had neither a topic on hand, nor were they intimate enough to strike up a casual conversation. Nonetheless, her challenge hanged in the air, waiting for a response.
じゃあ、あの鳥の話を。
Yeah, let's talk about Robin.
そこ
What
に
the
いる
fuck is
青い
that?
鳥。た
It's
まに
got
見
a
かけ
lot
る
of
んだけど、
attitude for
君の飼い
familiar.
鳥か？それとも、ほら、なんて言ったかな。プロイだっけ？あの鳥もアリスの使い魔？
Her eyes let slip for a moment a very natural response. It was annoyance, such as that which one might feel towards a troublemaker.
あれもプロイだけど、私とは何の関係もない
Yeah,
ん
it came with
だ
the
でしょ。
house.
ずいぶん古くからいるだけで、私もよく知らないわ。
ん？じゃあ勝手に住んでるのか？この家に。
It's probably a family heirloom, quote unquote. And if it's anything like, I don't know, it's like the droids in Star Wars. Once they've been around for long enough, they develop a personality, and they get on people's nerves.
勝手になんて私が許すはずがないでしょ。ロビンは本当に役に立たないけど、あんなのでも母から譲り受けたものだから、失敗続きでも特別に住まわせてあげてるの。
そっか、安心した。ここに住むの役に立たなきゃダメってわけでもないんだね。
She turned away in silence to avoid looking at his hapless grin. Thus began Sojiro's very lengthy monologue. It started with his part-time job, then moved on to school. Next came the amusement park and random gossip around town, and last, the subject of rent. He spent all of 20 minutes on mindless small talk. Then he ran out of things to say and finally stopped.
ごめん、アルバイトがあるから、もう行くよ。
And that was that. After finally getting his long-awaited chance to talk to her, he realized he had no exit plan in place. So, he returned the tray to the kitchen, placed his bag in the foyer, and headed for the door. She'd never seen the boy so candid. Which was why, overcome with surprise, she found herself calling out to him.
待って。
She had no reason to do so, and yet she called out anyway.
何？
その今日はポットがあったけど。
Which one, the ceramic one?
うん。昨日の反省点だったから、結局使ったのは自分だけだけど。
そう。そのポットはコーヒーとの兼用だから。
Oh, will it like
ハーブ
leach
ティーには
into
合わな
the
いわ。
into the like material? Sojiro's eyes grew wide with shock. Now he remembered that there had been all sorts of cups and teapots in the cupboard, each one specifically designed for a different type of tea.
なかなかに奥深い。
Yeah, there's a whole fucking world to it. I have like a little expensive, God, it probably cost me like $100 for like a little tiny ceramic Chinese teapot, where it's like one for the brewing, and then you pour it out into like another little teapot they use for serving. And it has like a little like a little stand for it that you can put a candle on to keep it warm. But it's so fucking small. I never end up using it. I just keep the tea in like the actual kettle I got, the electric kettle, and just put it on warm and just pour it out and serve it that way. Because I drink my tea out of a big fucking coffee mug instead of like the little almost shot-sized tea glasses they have, which, you know, yeah, I can have 5 of those, but I can also just make one big cup and just sip on that.
あれかな。慣れないことはするもんじゃないってことか。
She let out a vexed sigh.
どうして私を起こさなかったの？
While you were asleep. Either she had not heard what he said, or she had been waiting this whole time for a chance to ask him that. In any case, her question abruptly interrupted his stream of thought. He fell silent with introspection. The thought of waking her had not so much as crossed his mind, either that day or the previous one.
言って起こす気も起きることも期待していなかったの。
While you're asleep, you must have been tired. Her eyes were filled with animosity. Lies were useless against such an all-piercing gaze. The setting sun transformed the foyer into a battle of life and death. Lies or deceptive answers would not be permitted. Amidst the palpable tension that filled the room, where any move, wrong or otherwise, was likely to get him killed, he felt pain rather than fear. Alice's voice was icy cold, preemptively rejecting any response he was to give. The boy vaguely imagined a newborn chick that had fallen from the nest, struggling to survive on its own. It gasped, hanging on to a thread of hope, yet detesting where that thread hung.
言わなきゃいけないか。
Alice nodded sharply.
じゃあ言うけど、別に深い考えがあったわけじゃない。単に寝た子を起こすのは良くないだろ。
Yeah, it's like when I'm asleep at work and someone fucking wakes me up and tell me to go do something. It's like, excuse me?
冗談は聞いてないわ。
No, that's it.
冗談じゃないよ。眠っているのならそのままでいいと思ったんだ。話はしたいけど、それはまた目が覚めた次の機会にするべきだって。
随分と悠長なのね。青子があなたを守るのは、今日までだって聞いているけど、私に取り入る機会はこれが最後なのに。
Yeah, and if he missed his chance, then so be it, you know? That's just how, how the cookie crumbles.
それとも、あれだけ忠告されておいて、まだ何も分かっていないの？
He had not. He swore to her, agreed to her terms, and had gone so far as to sit face to face with her to get to know her. Surely, he thought, this was enough to escape death. And so he believed, as a mage, that his naive goodwill and simple-mindedness were all the reason she needed to execute him. Trivial misunderstandings would only make things worse at this point.
そりゃ何もわからないよ。魔術
I don't know if I said he or she there in that sentence,
たっ
but
た
it
数
was,
日でわかるもんか。
the little last bit was from her perspective.
はっきりしているのは、アリスも青崎も言ったことはきっちり守るってことだけだ。
なら、どうして？
Why what? Regace said what she really wanted to ask. She wanted to know why he did not beg for his life. She knew the answer. I mean, he can't stop you either way, you know. Even if he does, you can overpower him, so what's the point? She saw the look on his face when he turned to leave without so much as trying to wake her. A look of resignation. What on earth had it meant?
どうしてって、そう言われても困る。そうだな。機会が訪れなかったのなら、それはそういうことだと思ったのかもしれない。
Sometimes things just don't work out.
君の寝顔はそれぐらい、なんていうか、判断に困った。青崎とは違う意味で、簡単には関われないと思った。
Prickly in different ways. Sojiro struggled to find the right words, but said what he was feeling in the moment anyway. He'd seen a sleeping witch of the woods who clearly needed someone's help, yet sought the help of no one.
そう
Man, I fucking bungled that sentence.
しずきくんは関わろうとしているのね。その機会は訪れなかったのに。
機会はやってきたよ。なんでこっちも今日ぐらいは自分の勝手にして無茶をしたくなったんだ。
しずきくんの言う通りなら、私はあなたを拒絶するしかないのに。
Well, that's been the fucking, the aura you've just been putting out the entire time he's been here.
まあそこが難しいところなんだけど。
Haven't been, putting out the best of vibes around him. Sojiro glanced at the entrance. He had no reason to. He just felt the urge to do so.
多分そこを解決したがってるのは俺だけじゃないと思うよ。
He muttered as if speaking to himself, but it was clearly meant for her to hear. Alice knew full well how poorly he had understood the situation. All of this was one giant misunderstanding on his part. His tiny gesture of goodwill, pitiful and pure, resembled that of someone reaching out to help a dying kitten. For Alice, doing so would be akin to clutching the thorns of a rose. She felt pain in her chest for the first time in quite a while.
けど、私はあなたの同居を認めてはいないわ。
She addressed the floor at her feet to avoid showing him how she truly felt. If he had, he would have seen that her face looked just the way Aoko's had earlier.
だろうな。それはきっと今は解決できない問題だ。
Hey, you like your little space. That's fine.
でもそのうち何かの気まぐれであっさり終わるものかもしれない。だからその時までアリスはずっと俺を嫌っていていいんだと思う。
Her gasp of breath was like a response in itself. To suggest she could keep hating him. She had once wished to hear those words so dearly, if only once.
大体だぞ。アリスだけじゃなく青崎も同居を認めてない節があるじゃないか。
I mean, yeah, she does have every right to be upset about this situation.
だから認めてもらうなんて意気込み自体が間違いなんだ。どうあっても俺は青崎や君たちとは違うんだし。となると、あとは我慢してもらうしかない。
Yeah, let's both just continue to be uncomfortable. And, hopefully eventually it'll, we can make something work out.
難しい話だけど、一緒にいても邪魔にならないぐらいなら、その可能性は上がらないか？
Thinking that, of course, it was possible. But if it were that easy, none of this would have been necessary in the first place. Alice nodded in agreement. There was no way he could have planned for things to work out this well. But his plan, in fact, had worked, if inadvertently, from the moment the conversation began.
例えば、あなたが隣にいても眠っていられるぐらいに。
そうだね。例えばの話。
Yeah, sure. Add some more meaning to it. He didn't mean it to come off that way, but... Beaming, Sojiro stood up and left the foyer. Alice did not stop him this time. He had a newfound spring in his step as he headed to work. But something gave him a moment's
実
pause.
際、覗き見は趣味が悪いと思う。
He complained aloud to make sure a certain someone heard him. No more than 2 minutes had passed since Sojiro left the mansion when a long-haired figure came creeping into the foyer. Aoko Ozaki had been just outside the entire time, eavesdropping.
帰ってたの。
With a sullen glare, Alice addressed the interloper. Aoko was shivering from head to toe after standing in the cold for so long. She deemed gloves an abomination and refused to wear them except in the most extreme cold. As a result, her slender fingers were pitifully swollen and red. I don't get people who don't like wearing gloves. I fucking love wearing gloves because I have a nice pair of leather driving gloves that I look really fucking snazzy in, so I'll wear them at any occasion I get. Also, you'd be less cold if you put on some fucking pants.
ちょっと前にね。それでどうだったのアリス？
I do not care if I look
随
silly
分と
as long
話
as
してた
I'm
みたい
warm.
だけど。
At work, I have a fucking Michelin Man Stay Puft Marshmallow fucking snowsuit. Big, big, like, puffy, grayish-white coat, and, like, even the puff pants to go with it. Not quite snow pants, but they're, like, poof, big down pants. Super warm. I'm like the warmest dude on the flight line during the winter. It's fantastic. Especially because I'm usually the guy who they make stand ground on an engine run when it's snowing sideways for 3 hours and my boots get frozen to the ground. But hey, you know, I get paid for it, so I can't really complain. She looked strangely elated as she blew on her hands to warm them. Alice was not fooled at all by Aoko's facade, clear from the ill-tempered look she wore on her face.
あなたがここまで過保護とは思わなかったわ。意地？それとも義務？
どっちかっていうと成り行きね。
Uh-huh.
で、どうだったのよ結果は。気に食わなかったら実力行使に出るって言ってたじゃない。
Alice's mood was growing darker and darker the longer she had to look at Aoko's cheerful posturing. All went back to their dinner together the previous night. After everything that happened in the foyer, Alice was both more suspicious of and intrigued by Sojiro than ever before. She insisted that Aoko let him walk home alone the next day. She then used a concoction to fake her slumber and recreate the same scene as the previous day. That portion of her plan went well, but the rest had veered totally off course. It did not help to know that her roommate had savored every moment of it on the other side of the wall either. To make matters worse, Alice was frustrated at herself for letting such trivial matters bother her. She stared at the teacup still sitting on the floor. Her pale fingers traced its cold rim.
青子の言う通り、害にはならない人ね。あくまで今のところの話だけど。
She forced a tone of indifference in order to hide her irritation with her appearance. Apprentice. It said apprentice there. It was in this moment that Sojiro's fate was decided.
あら、それだけ？アリスにしては長く話してたのに。
Relentless, Aoko continued her line of questioning. Alice only stared back icily.
青子、あなた、隠していたわね。
She voiced her displeasure at Aoko's behavior in no uncertain terms. Suddenly, the air in the foyer felt cold as ice. They stared at one another, each trying to guess the other's next move.
さすがね。よくそこに気がついたもんだわ。でも、こればかりは譲れないのよ。
Aoko widened her stance and glared at Alice.
何も全て奪うとは言っていないわ。そうね。あなたにも3割ぐらいは回すつもり。
30% of what? The rent? Completely unperturbed by Aoko's warlike posturing, a simple look was all Alice needed to keep her roommate in check.
10が3に化けちゃ、ちょっと黙ってらんないわね。
高望みは命取りよ、青子。
Alice remained calm and dignified, not moving a muscle. It felt like hours passed as the two stared at each other in silence. Aoko was grinding her teeth in frustration. At this rate, their alliance would be in tatters before they even confronted their foe. And worst of all, she knew Alice had the upper hand.
Catch.
Aoko accepted her defeat with a tisk.
悔しいけど、アリスが6、私が4で手を打つわ。
35. It pained her to settle for less. Alice nodded in satisfaction.
そうね。家主は私だけど、彼を招いたのは青子だから。その
いいけど。ああ、情けない。こんなことなら錬金
Yeah,
術で
just
もかじっ
fucking
ておくんだった
crash the global
そうす
precious
れば
metals
こんな思い
economy.
をしなくても済んだのに。
そうでもないわ。彼らバブルが弾けて大変だって話よ。
Alice spoke with the confidence of someone with first-hand experience of such matters, yet Aoko only nodded absent-mindedly in response. Their bitter fight was over how to split the take of Sojiro's rent now that he was officially going to move in. Not the most becoming quarrel for a pair of mages. Forcing a boy to live with them and then demanding he pay rent was beyond extortion. It was truly vicious.
でもそんなセリフが出るってことはアリスもようやく認めたってことね。
Aoko was triumphantly satisfied with herself.
認めてはいないけど、公園での夜、彼を結界で捕捉しなかった責任があるから、彼と約束をした青子だけを責められないでしょ。
約束。
Aoko looked up at the ceiling as she recalled the night in the amusement park. Only a week at most had passed since then, but Aoko already felt that Sojiro's fate and her own had become intrinsically linked. Or perhaps they had always been connected by fate since the moment they'd met. She could not see into the future, so there was no way to know for sure.
ま、縁とか運とかはともかく変だけどいいやつよね、あいつ。
Yeah, but weird doesn't mean bad. Thought uttered to herself in self-confirmation more than to Alice. Alice could only look on in annoyance, perhaps in an attempt to voice her displeasure at her comment.
青子、あの傷を知ってる？
傷？
I mean, he walks around with a bandaged neck. Alice raised her slender fingers to her mouth as if to push the words back in. She had blurted it out in the heat of the moment. A secret that no one was supposed to know, but which one couldn't keep to herself. Aoko tilted her head in confusion.
So-
Yeah, you got a one-up on her. You know something about Sojiro, she doesn't. Nana boo-boo. Alice looked relieved for some reason. Her sudden antipathy? Oh, God, I hate this fucking word. Towards Aoko had dissipated as well.
幸せな人。
Said Alice as she took a sip of her cold tea. She made no attempt to explain who was fortunate or why. A moment later, her beautiful face contorted in revulsion.
まず、
Yeah, if you don't know how to properly brew loose tea leaves, for how long at the right temperature, that tea's gonna be dog shit. She abandoned the cup to the floor once more. Her black dress unceremoniously scrunched up as she stood. Just one sip of the underbrewed tea sent her fleeing to the drawing room to remove the bad taste from her mouth. Underbrewed? Really? Most people overbrew the tea. As soon as she was gone, Aoko hesitantly took the teacup in her own hands. It was almost certainly better left untasted, but she could not help but wonder how Sojiro's tea could arouse such a strong response. After one small sip, she returned it quietly to the floor.
だからティーバッグにしろって言ったのに、あのバカ。
The expression on her face was nearly identical to that of her roommates. Damn, he must have fucked it up real bad. Hey, new books. We got 0.5 chapters? Let's go. Let's go. We do have one. Wow, look at that. But with that, we are going to end it here for today. A little short episode because I don't know how long that little 0.5 is. So we'll have to do that next time on the next episode of Mihoyo, where we'll probably also, go into the next chapter as well, depending on how long that is. So, hope to see you guys all next time. But before you leave, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ring the notification bell. So that way you'll be here when the next episode of Mihoyo comes out. Catch you guys all later. Bye. Mwah.